Hey everyone, welcome to Freedom Live. I'm your host, Mike Dano. Tonight we have a very special guest joining us for the first time. His name is Flannagan. How are you tonight, Ann?
Doing good, Michael. How are you?
Oh, good. Can't be better. Well, thanks again for joining us. Tonight we'll be discussing the legalization of prostitution. But first, as always, I always ask my guests who come on for the first time a few questions so the audience get to know you better. How did you arrive at your current political belief? Were you public schooled, private schooled, homeschooled, unschooled? Were your parents political, non-political, apolitical?
Yeah, my parents were definitely political. I was raised by ultra-fundamentalist right-wing Christians who probably indoctrinated me for most of my life, or at least during grade school years, with the farthest thing from any sort of voluntarism you can imagine. One of the reasons I have such a hard time, like I'm so intolerant of racism, sexism, gay bashing, slut shaming, things like that now, is because I grew up around so much of it constantly. Um, yeah, I was homeschooled until I was 16, and I finished at community college until I went to a four-year school where I met Mike Shanklin, and I think up until that point, I joined the Libertarian Party when I was in 2002, and it wasn't until about 4 years later when I met Mike Shanklin that I think I'd ever actually met another Libertarian. Uh, but I would say that I arrived at my viewpoints just because everything that I've ever believed or had to do for a part of my life before now was something I had to fight for and fight back against. So I definitely came to the conclusion that authority is something that people make up over each other, not a real thing.
Right? Yeah. It's yeah. A lot of people they sometimes they have to find out the truth about government and whatnot, sort of the hard way. I mean, I know I had to do it. As a libertarian, well, first of all, I voted Republican almost my entire voting life until up about 5, 6 years ago, and I was a libertarian, and because I still thought that there was hope. I still believe that if you just put in the right people, everything's going to get better. Which obviously that's just a lie, but it's a good mental cushion, if you will, a safety net that a lot of people just they don't want to get rid of. And uh, if anyone who is libertarian and followed Ron Paul knows that the election system's rigged, and so if you keep asking
Yeah,
questions, yeah, if you keep asking questions, you eventually you run out of excuses and you realize that government is just a lie, and you know, and anarchy really is what is. So.
I personally agree. Think Henry David Thoreau said it best when he said, "The government is best which governs least," and when the people are ready for it, that is exactly the sort of government they will have. I think that shows like this and just the movement in general with Liberty Movement Radio is doing a whole lot to help accomplish that. When the majority of people get to the point where they don't feel like they need to be ruled, then that's what we'll have. People have more power than they realize. They just have to take responsibility and self-ownership first. And I think programs like yours do a lot to. I think they do more to make a difference in that area than voting does. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I find, you know, talking to one person at a time, and if what I say, something clicks in their heads, and they might not respond very kindly at first, but I've had people come to me months down the line and say, hey, I thought about what you said, and I really agree with it, and I don't agree with this anymore, and I'm starting to think I'm an anarchist, and I say, you know what, that's great. Uh, the people that are minarchists, uh, great first start. Keep asking questions. Don't stop there. Um, so, yeah, it's okay. So we're gonna jump into your topic tonight for legalizing prostitution, and any voluntarists that would view this, anyone who believes in self-ownership and self-responsibility and your body is your property, will pretty much agree that they'll agree with me when I say that, prostitutes can do really whatever they want. I mean, they're trading what's rightfully theirs with people who want to trade with them. But you know, that's my whole take on it. I want to hear your take on it.
Well, I think that you said a lot when you pointed out what's rightfully theirs, because I personally think anybody who is against prostitution, or at least against it being legal, is not a libertarian, and they're certainly not an anarchist, because when you're telling someone that they can't profit financially from their own body because you find them doing so to be immoral, you are denying to them their very most basic form of self-ownership, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree. I mean, I can go back when I was a statist and I believed in government and I believed that laws were legitimate. I think I would have absolutely been against prostitution, and I would have probably said, well, prostitution's illegal. If they do it, they deserve to be arrested. I mean, that's just the way a lot of statists think, and
Right,
even I thought that way.
right, and I hope I don't get labeled as a statist for saying this, but I am a libertarian. I don't necessarily call myself an anarchist. I don't think that there's a huge amount of difference between me and an anarchist, but I just for the sake of this conversation, I really do think that some laws are legitimate. Laws against, say, murder, for example. And one of the ways that I arrived at libertarianism in general was I started by asking myself this question: what did it actually make sense to put someone in a cage for, since we were having tax money stolen from us to build these cages for our safety, right? And I mean, basically, I don't think that anybody should be locked up for anything unless they are a danger to other people, straight up. And I don't see how someone that's a prostitute, and I mean a direct danger too, because that's often the issue. That's often what separates libertarians from just conservative Republicans, is that we don't believe anything that is directly harming someone else should be legal, whereas a Republican should be illegal, whereas a Republican will tell you that, oh, well, prostitution harms society, or two men getting married harms the underlying morals in our culture, right?
Hmm.
And I
Well,
do,
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think those things are related, but I'll get into that in a minute. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add a little point. I don't want to get too far off topic. Well, you mentioned that you think there should be laws against murder, and I
Sorry, you cut out there for a second, man. What did you say? Michael. Are you still there, man?